Hey everybody, welcome to Fast Track Coaching. This is episode 1 gazillion, so welcome. We have been doing this for a while. Hey, and we're bringing Tamara back. You guys are stoked. Tamara Lackey's here. Hi, Tamara.
Hello, Dane Sanders.
Thank you for being on my show again.
Finally, the 1 gazillionth show. This is the one I wanted to be on.
Well, I think when Tom Hanks hosts Saturday Night Live, he's like, yeah, this is the 19th time I've hosted Saturday Night Live or whatever. That's kind of like you as a guest on my show. You've been on, I think you're like the reigning champ right now.
Yeah, I think technically it's more like the Alec Baldwin, Steve Martin. You know how they compete?
Yeah.
So who am I competing with? Who's the other one?
Good question. Let me see. Kevin's been on a bit. Who has been? The Toffers have been on a number of times. But when you've been on regularly, like probably 3 times a year, I'm guessing.
3 times a year for at least 1 year running.
No, you've been on for 2 years, and I actually think it's because you're one of my favorites. I think that's why.
Oh.
I know you get requested a lot and all that sort of thing, but beyond those other people, I think I'm the one that really...
Yes. You're my Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. So welcome to the show. For those of you guys who are unfamiliar, this is not just Tamara and I chatting away about nostalgia. This is actually a conversation to help you and your business move forward a little bit. And one of the reasons why this gave me a great excuse to reach out and ask Tamara to be on the show is because she has published this fancy pants new book right here called Envisioning Family, A Photographer's Guide to Making Meaningful Portraits of the Modern Family. And I thought it was a really intriguing title and a really intriguing book, and I had a chance to look through it. And I'm excited to engage this idea of making meaning for clients, because I have this bias, Tamara, and I want to hear what you think about this, that if you make a lot of meaning that you actually have the capacity to make meaning for people, you can create a frame and really give a narrative. You can do a lot of things to help make value, create meaning, and therefore create value. And then when you create value, you actually can justify charging more for what you're doing because you're doing more for your clients. So I'm really intrigued to talk about that and what came into all this. But first of all, congratulations on the new book. This is exciting.
Thank you. I'd love to say it was nothing, but it's so much. It's so much work to write a book, don't you think?
It is a lot of work, and it's funny too, because when you write a book, people think that you're a millionaire, right? Because that's what happens when you sell books, and and it's like a year's worth of your life to make it happen, and you pour your heart and soul into it, and then someone buys it at the discount rack at Amazon for $10, and
yeah, and you're like, I got 48 cents out of that.
But I'm with you, because the best thing about these things, though, these crazy book ideas, is you thoughtfully considered, with a beginning and a middle and an end, a really big idea, and put your guts into it. And I think it'll be fun to talk about. So excited to get into that in just a second. For those of you who are at home, if you're unfamiliar with Fast Track Coaching, what we do is Tamara and I have had this conversation in advance of us getting together, but we're in the chat room with you right now. So if you're watching it live. So when it broadcasts live, it's playing and we're chatting away with you. You're welcome to ask any questions that come up as a result of our conversation, and we'll address those as best we can. And for those of you who are watching the replay, you can ask any questions apart from reaching out on the Twitter or the Facebook or whatever you want for those purposes. So, or even the Google Plus if you're really, progressive. Jumping right in, I want to hear well, I guess I should probably give some context. If you've never seen the show and you don't know who Tamara or I are, I'm a photographer, writer, blah, blah, blah. Tamara, tell a little bit about your story and what got you here. And especially, I want you to emphasize what was behind you writing this book. What was your deal?
So I'm to move beyond the description, photographer, writer, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Just why this book? Because you've written other books before now, and it seems like this seems like, as I look at the course of what you've done, I see the progression. But for folks who are at home, maybe this is their first introduction to your work as an author. Why this book, and why would it be meaningful for folks?
Well, I think if you're getting into portrait photography, you're not sitting there looking at the field as like, that is where I'm going to make $1 zillion. Mm-hmm. Because although you can make a great living from photography, most people get into it because they have a heart for it, that they found that they created something, they loved it. And oftentimes that goes hand in hand with connecting with the individuals they're photographing and feeling something and delivering the images and genuinely being moved by the fact that it mattered that you took those photographs. And that, you know, I think when you boil everything down, that's the heart and soul of what people are so inspired by when they decide, I'm going to become a photographer. And even when you are a photographer, after a while, you know, you can get jaded, you can get overwhelmed, you can get burnt out. And sometimes you need to stop and say, why am I doing this? And what do I care about? And for me, I recognized that what I cared about was the fact that these portraits are actually meaningful, that they're not just crap I'm, you know, churning out here by here. I do less shoots than I used to because I want to pour myself into them, and that's been working very well for me. So when it came down to the idea of, do I want to do a book about photography, I realized the thing I cared the most about was, you know, being inspired by what's transpired in my own life and my own experience as a photographer. I wanted to incorporate that into this book, a book about family photography, which as a genre is typically one of the least exciting. You know, like, ooh, I want to shoot fashion. No, I want to shoot family. You know,
right.
It's not necessarily like the most exciting thing. And yet I think if you look at it a little differently and recognize the significance of what family means to us, it can be really exciting and moving and meaningful.
Well, it's striking to me. It's funny. You asked who has been on the show a number of times, and one person who's been on probably 3 times now is Jeremy Cowart, and he was recently in town, and I was assisting him on a shoot he was doing, and we actually got into this very topic because he gets a chance to take these really fun, sexy like pictures of you know, celebrities and musicians and actors and, you know, all these really cool people, and he has this crazy knack for taking their picture before they explode. Like randomly he happened to have photographed Tim Tebow. He has this great story.
Oh, you mean before they explode
onto the scene, right?
I was like, what are you talking
until
about?
they self-combust. It's really weird.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But he's done that over and over and over again, and it's fun. And he's an amazing photographer, and I just love him. He's a great guy. But we were talking, and he was saying that some of his discouragement is, like, for example, if he takes pictures of a band, for example, and he cares a lot about this whole idea of meaning making a lot too. But he'll be like, yeah, so I'll take these really cool pictures of a really cool band that's about to emerge, and 2 years from now, the record company will go, okay, that's done. Let's move on to another. You know, he's really taking pictures of packaging for an album, and it's meaningful for a moment. And then he turned to me and he said, kind of in this very humble moment of like, really, I think family photographs are probably the most meaningful work that you could do because it actually has legacy. It sticks around for, you know, a decade or 100. You know, it really is significant. And I just really appreciated that because he's a family guy, you're a family person, I'm a family person, and the folks we photograph are that as well. But not all photographs are meaningful. Like, I've seen a lot of family photographers who kind of churn and burn. They just kind of get them in, get them out. They don't necessarily take the time to create the meaning that I think you're meaning. And I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what that means for you when you say that. How many times can I say the word mean or meaning in the same sentence?
What do you mean by that question?
Nice.
Well, okay, so, you know, using an example, and the one of the, I think it's the second chapter in the book, goes into this, more personal than I've done before. You know, I talked a little bit about the fact that I had a better idea of what I was shooting when I was photographing families as I built my own family. And in many ways, the building of my own family has been...
But I need to interrupt because not everyone understands what you mean by building of your family, and you literally did. I mean, you went to all ends of the earth.
They're Legos. My family's made out of Legos.
They're not animate objects. Shh.
They don't breathe. Okay, so yeah, I have 3 children, and 2 of which are adopted, and my son from Ethiopia and my youngest from Ecuador. But none of the experiences were, and I think anybody who either physically gives birth, like my oldest child, like the birthing process, not to get too graphic,
right?
But it was not easy either. And so it's like, in many respects, it feels like you are fighting for each member of your family that comes in. because none of it comes easily. Right. And I think most people who have a family feel that way, whether it means the primary relationship. If you have a primary relationship and it's been something that you've put time and attention to, you're usually working for it. It's not to say you're not rewarded from it. It's not amazing, but there takes a certain amount of like patience and communication. And how do you feel? I'm going to keep my mouth shut while you talk. You know, there's effort that goes into every relationship you build. And as your family grows, and depending on the size of your family, it doesn't mean that you work less for a smaller family, but certainly as it grows, if you want to maintain relationships with each person in your family, there's a significant amount of effort and time and focus that goes into that. So when I talk about building my family, I don't just mean the initial, literally getting on a plane and flying for 28 hours to Africa or spending 2 months in Ecuador. I mean the actual ongoing building that is the progression of family. So when you take this photograph, to get it back to photography, when you take this photograph of a family, I want people to look at it and see all that effort and that connection. And that's what meaning is to me.
Well, I'm hearing a couple things of what you're saying. Some of it is effort, like you're describing. Some of it is kind of proactive intention. Like you don't just like you don't abracadabra get lucky. And sometimes you get lucky and get a good image, but sometimes there's a lot that can go into prep to more guarantee a meaningful image if you think about it. Just like you don't adopt a kid from Ethiopia or Ecuador without doing a little homework and putting yourself in a position where that's possible. And is that what you mean by kind of setting things up or framing it out, or is there more to it that I'm missing?
Yeah, I mean, in many respects, there's. I'll just say this: taking a great family photograph is the hardest job I have. And I have photographed extremely well-known people. I've photographed extremely well-known politicians, celebrities, you know, places that was physically hard to get to, places I had to squeeze myself in to shoot, immense amount of gear that went into pulling off one shot. None of that is more difficult to me than getting 5 or 6 people looking at me and being authentic and comfortable and having a relationship that comes across on screen that doesn't feel fake or forced or contrived. That is really difficult to do and to capture it technically well. It's the hardest photographs I take. And even though I love photographing children and individuals and couples, that comes more fluidly to me than the act of pulling all these people in with the hope of pulling out one image that was actually shot in camera that way.
That is so helpful, because even the way that you're teasing out what meaning means, and then a lot goes into it. I love how you've laid the book out concretely, like really nuts and bolts around things like, you know, your gear, your space, your technically what you're doing, how you interact, whether you're doing it in a family's home or where you're doing it on location, like all these different contexts, and prepping the context for maximum return seems really wise. Like it's just, well, let me ask you this. I've seen people speculatively photograph, like where they say, beach, camera, go. And they hope for the best. And what I'm hearing you say is like, and I've seen you shoot, like there is a spontaneity to what you do, but it does seem like you've done a lot contextually so that the spontaneity is contained and you're more likely to get what you're looking for. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think the spontaneity part is that has to be part of every shoot, or else you can't get those natural looks. If everything's so planned out, you're going to get this, and it's going to be horrible.
Right.
That's the element that you have to bring in when it comes to, the interpersonal exchange you're having with the subjects. But certainly when I have a child spinning around and laughing at me, I'm not going to click if she only has a catch light in one eye. If I'm not bouncing the light up somewhere, I'm constantly thinking about that. So even though it looks spontaneous, there's a lot of behind the scenes, like I don't want to waste these shots, you know?
Right.
I don't shoot a lot in terms of, I don't ever do more than 3 sessions a week, max. And so when I'm doing those shoots, there's going to be a lot of time and focus put into them. Yeah. So I get maximum return and I spend a lot of time with them. It's simply, it's a choice I made because I wanted to have the most return emotionally from it too, because I have been burnt out. I have felt overwhelmed. I have felt tired. And when I sense that coming on, I realize that's more dangerous to me than anything else I can think of, because that starts meaning the end of a career that I love.
So I want to ask a question that's related, and in my head I'm spinning around about it because I'm I'm nervous that I'm going to sound like a Terry Gross wannabe with this kind of a question. But Terry Gross is from
Terry Gross. Okay, yes. Okay.
But I really mean it, like especially given your context of someone who's really built a very eclectic family. You know, I know your husband Steve. I love you guys. I mean, you guys are dear friends to Tammy and I, which is why this question is meaningful to me. But what does family mean to you? And I'm wondering if you'd talk a little bit about that, because I think not only would it be interesting, yours is the kind of family that can touch a lot of different kinds of families. And where I want to go with it is, once I hear what family means to you, I'm interested in connecting the dots between that and that being your subject of choice as a photographer.
So as you ask the question, I have a flood of images that pop into my head.
Okay.
Surprising amount of them around cooking. I don't know why. I love to cook. Maybe that's why. And it's a big, I think most families, that's kind of the place where everyone shows up.
Yeah, the table.
But
right.
Say again?
The table. I mean, I think,
the
like table, the fireplace, these kind of centerpieces, right?
Yeah, and I think I'm probably not alone in this, but as a mom, there's something that's a rush in me to feed them well. There's like, that's the perfect. But, so your question is, what does family mean? And I'm going to try to summarize this because, again, I think I'm getting a huge amount of responses in my head. One of the things that helps put my family in context is I know what it means to not have a family. I know what it means to have a family that is absent of emotional glue, where you're just living in the same place. And I also know what it means simply by viewing it and not by experiencing it, what it means to have grown up and to live your whole life and to go off in the world and never experience what that means outside of theory. And that is what we see a lot. And anybody who's traveled to third world countries, especially in orphanages and stuff, you see that and you understand this is all something they're learning. That's how Annalise started. We adopted her at 3.5. She had a picture that said, Mommy, Daddy, like showed exactly who everyone is and how she was going to fit into that relationship. And it was, a structured layout of what that means. So, in that regard, I think the biggest thing that we as human beings feel in this world is this lack of connection. It can be really painful, whether it's lack of connection to each other or distrust that comes about with relationships we care about, or lack of connection to something greater, whatever that means to you, universe, God, whatever. That loneliness and that separation can be painful on a lot of levels. And I think what a family can do for you when you invest in that emotional glue and that connection, and then I have your back and you have mine and let's care about each other, it can ease a lot of that pain in a way that I don't know another way to replace. And in a way that I think is one of the hardest things to lose and know is behind you for anybody who's experienced that.
Powerful. Obviously it makes sense to me that you're in your element, you're in your wheelhouse when it comes to the genre of choice, because it seems like it has connected on your life's resume. Like it's just deeply embedded into your world, not only with kind of how you guys have built your family and, your relationship with your partner, your historical context, how you connect with folks. Because you've seen such an eclectic mix of all those things, is it hard for you to not just go to third world countries and just take pictures of folks in that kind of a context? Or is it a disconnect to be in North Carolina and take pictures of celebrities and their families where it's all kind of everything looks perfect?
No, because everybody's dealing with the same thing regardless of your checkbook. I mean, not the same thing. Don't make them cross as like here.
Right.
Oh, is that the thing about the very rich and the very poor have the same problems? Not exactly. But
there was a Saturday Night Live skit recently with Charles Barkley, who's a multimillionaire, talking about white people problems, and it was pretty funny. But anyways,
first world problems. Yeah,
that's right. First world gender.
So it's not the exact same, but I will tell you what it's done for me is I won't roll out on a shoot and see people not get there, and by there I mean show me what they really mean to each other. I will wait however long it takes to have that happen, because I know at the root of most families, not every single person in the world, but that is what they're connecting to, and that's what they're going to care about, and that's what at the end of the day is going to make the whole session worth it for me and for them. And to miss that and just capture their likenesses on a pretty background is a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah.
You know, we're all so busy. It's a lot of effort for them to get together and make this shoot happen. I don't want to waste their time. I don't want them to sit down with me in an ordering session and look up and say, that's us. That's all our faces.
Right.
Great. I'll get this, and this, bye. You know, like, what was that? Yeah. Like, none of us have time for that. I mean, it's not that we don't have time for that, but that's not what I care about producing.
Okay, so let's say it's you're in the shoes of somebody who's watching our conversation right now or participating on the chat, and they're thinking, okay, that's all fine and good, and I'm searching. I'm the viewer, and I'm searching for my genre fit, like for this season of my life, things that I really want to focus on and commit to. Obviously, the alignment for you is really clear. How would somebody look for the most meaningful genre for them to shoot if, for example, for whatever reason, families doesn't resonate for them?
Yeah, well, I mean, God, it sounds so simple, but what do you really, 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 really care about? Like, start there. Like, if I were somebody who was insanely interested in fashion, and that really mattered to me and turned my head every time I was daydreaming and sketching and doing all that sort of stuff, I'm not. You know, I like nice clothes, but I'm not insanely obsessed.
Right.
If I were, I would make that my career. I think that would really matter to me. If I was somebody who just was stunned about being around people of noteworthy or well-known or celebrities, I would make sure that I had a lot of my career around that. If I were obsessed with sports, I'd want to be a sports photographer. Start there, because photography is gigantic, you know? Don't just roll into something because it seems to be what the thing is that pays the bills. If you're not leading, I mean, I'm not going to be the first person to say this or the last. If you're not leading this with your passion, you're working.
No doubt. Well, yeah. But the challenge obviously is people are holding up their passion against opportunism. Like, okay, that's all fine and good, but what works and what?
Well, you still have to work after you find your passion, but at least make most of it fun. Well, you still have to hustle.
No, but what like, for example, let's say people go, okay, and I'm playing the other side of it. I'm in agreement with you, no question. But that's right, my friend.
Oh wait, we're split screen.
That was well done, or you just went to the wrong side. But whatever.
Either awesome embarrassing.
I'm mindful of folks who, and we've all had these conversations where someone's like, yeah, what I'm clear is I'm passionate about bands, music, whatever. But they look at that world and they go, but I don't think I'm going to get a job at Rolling Stone, and I really am terrified of that world, and they're second guessing their own capacity or abilities, or they just see as a competition as inaccessible or too hard, and they don't dive in, and they're holding this tension of, this is what I say I'm passionate about, but that just looks really hard. So I'll go with low-hanging fruit, and I'll go shoot. The cliche is, I'll go shoot weddings, and then once I make enough money, then I'll go do what I really am passionate about. And there's a disconnect for me in that. But how do you respond to folks who make those kinds of observations?
Well, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with doing the fill-in work that pays the bills.
Sure.
As you're getting to where you're going. The question is, are you still working on getting to where you want to go? It can be really easy to say, I start with this and I just rolled into it and stuck. Right. 20 years later, here I am.
Yep.
Well, if that wasn't what you loved all along,
Right.
I shot weddings for the people I met. They were a wonderful ability to start a relationship that I continue with portraits and will continue with portraits, but I did not want to continue shooting weddings. It just didn't fit with what I was interested in, but I still did it for 8 years.
Right.
But knowing that there's going to be an eventual fade out, and that I ended up learning a lot of skills from that. So I don't think if for instance, your question is, if you're really into music and bands and you're afraid you won't get a job with Rolling Stone, well, gosh, there's a giant amount of things that have to do with music, and it's not all working for Rolling Stone.
That's right. That's right.
It's not just shooting bands in bars, but it has to do with maybe promoting DJs or trying to get a job with record companies, or creating your own job where you're creating a kick-ass blog covering bands that travel.
Right.
There could be a million ways to create a job out of that. that has to do with that industry, not just the norms of you work here or you work here. That's not the society we're in anymore. You can create what you want to do. You don't have to go to the big players, because you can become a big player depending on how well you produce your work.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was in a conversation on a future episode of coaching with Ann Ruthven, who lives in Australia now, and she got a freelance gig, shooting for Airbnb, where...
you told me about that.
Did I tell you about this?
Yes.
Well, I told you about Airbnb.
No, you told me about Airbnb.
Right,
Airbnb,
but she got a job for Airbnb, because Airbnb is like, they if you go to their website, and this is not a plug, but some of you guys are going to go there. It's AIRB, the letter NB.com. They are incredibly image centric. Like, they really care a lot about how their spaces are featured. So they'll actually, if you sign up and they think it's a cool site, a cool place that could rent out a lot, they'll hire a professional photographer like Ann, and they'll show up at your place and they'll shoot professionally, and then Airbnb owns the images, the rights to them. Yeah. But they're willing to do that, and she got a great contract gig. But the way she got the contract gig was she was like, she went to the site, and she thought, these images are really great. Somebody didn't just do this with their point and shoot, and she contacted them, and she got a gig. And I thought, brilliant. Like, that's
exactly, That's good job, Ann.
Good job, Ann. Exactly.
Yeah, but exactly. That's the thing. Well, she's obviously thinking through all this, and she evaluates a lot of this, and that's smart.
Totally.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. Is so to kind of say, well, there's either the A or B, and you can create C through Z.
The idea though of choosing your own adventure, I think for a lot of folks that feels foreign still. I know it's crazy if you spend any time on the internet and different things. It does seem like for a lot of folks, creating your own adventure and living into it and creating out of it, that's my career. My experience of you, that's yours. But there's a lot of folks that are still in this kind of analog mindset of that's not how it works. Like, you go to where the establishment is and you try to get a job with them, or you try to go to established genres or established industry and get work within those spaces.
Yeah, but how secure is any of that?
Well, say more about that, because I'm in agreement. But what?
Well, how many magazines shut down in the last couple of years? Mm-hmm. That was the secure establishment, right? How many layoffs have there been out in these major organizations that are the places to be? Kodak just, bankrupt. I mean, how many airlines have gone bankrupt? Those are all the established main places that you'd go to, and how secure is that? Mm-hmm. I would rather be in charge of my own future than wait for either a pink slip or not sure what's going to happen, or a layoff, or an outsourcing of my job for stock photography.
Oh, but you're confident. I'm going to play the other side. Like, I'm
human.
Okay, fair enough. Well, what does that look like? Where do you find yourself second guessing your own process and choices?
I know that I can hustle, and I know that I would rather be the one in charge of getting my jobs than a third party source who doesn't really think much about me or my paycheck.
What? They're not thinking right now about my well-being?
I would rather be in charge of that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah,
you would.
Well, I am. But it's funny. Like, I know for me in my own life, and I love that I get to interview because I don't have to be on the line all the time on this. But absolutely, for me, I'm constantly in a state of, every morning I wake up and I decide if I'm going to take responsibility for my career or not. And when I do, it tends to turn out better than when I don't.
Right. Funny that.
But
I think also, no, please keep going with that.
Well, I was just going to say, but there's just also a lot of days where I'm down in the dumps, or I'm discouraged, or circumstantially things aren't kind of clicking the way I'd prefer. And it can be, what you guys don't know at home is that Tamara and I we're close friends. And it's not uncommon when I'm down in the dumps to call my friend. And I remember one time early in our friendship, we were talking about friends who've been on medication, and I've been on medication. I'm not saying Tamara, nothing like that. But Tamara's advice to me was, take off your socks and shoes, go find a spot of grass and go for a run. And that actually might be more beneficial for you than anything, just to get perspective and to catch your breath and to go back at it again. And that was hugely helpful for me, just to have a friend speak into my life and say, yeah, you're a little crazy right now, slow down, smell the roses, and then go again. How do you do that in your own life when you're up against it, not in the best, things aren't going circumstantially perfect? You're not getting book deals being sent to you left and right. I know this doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen.
So 2 things. One, thank you for that. Also, I have to give the credit to Duke University. They did a study that said exercising was just as effective as medicines when people are feeling down, and in many cases even more so, depending on how frequently it was part of your life. So I think that's pretty fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Plus, I think you're the same way as I am. I get a lot of perspective by shutting everything down and just stepping away from it all. It's kind of stunning. It's not difficult to get wrapped up in this energy field of responding to everybody all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But the second part was responding to the question, which was...
What do you do when you're down in the dumps and you don't want to take responsibility for your career and you would just like someone to send you a check?
Okay, so because I went out with you and Tammy and Steve. We were in New York at Photo Plus, and Photo Plus was in October, and it was around it was kind of like if you're listening to a concert and the crescendo is about to come on. That was the crescendo of the most amount of stress I've ever had balled up at once, because 12 things were happening at one time and everything was due. And about 4 of those 12 things were not going well. How's that for a good summary?
Yeah, that's pretty good. So, and I had the live play-by-play. So, but these folks didn't. So, what did you do to work that out besides run away to Australia?
Yeah, exactly. I was 6 days to Australia, and while I was sitting there, literally an hour before we met you for breakfast, I think it was something stunning. Got a message that said the place I was speaking in New Zealand just went under and took everybody's money. Do you remember that?
I do. Vividly.
That was the last second kind of frosting. What? So it was this kind of vortex. And what I found was the easiest thing in the world for me to do in situations like that is cry in my pillow and drink a nice glass of wine. Cry to my friends. Thank you. And but then just one step in front of the other. It's amazing to me how many times if you back off of the problem.
Yeah.
I should let you answer this sentence. How many times when you back off of the problem, it resolves? Have you noticed that? You're fighting for it and you're fighting for it, you're trying.
Yeah.
So in that one experience, just to close that up, and then I want to just quickly say something else. In that experience, I ended up going to Australia and said, you know what? I committed to these workshops. Let's see how it goes. And it went so well. And I got so much energy back from the people I was supposed to be teaching. Granted, I had a presentation to deliver. I felt really good about what I delivered, but the energy you get back just solves all the problems. And you're like, oh, humanity, love, forgiveness, world karma. It was by the end of that time, and then I actually took a full-on vacation. By the end of that time, I came back super zenned out. I think it helped that I lost my phone. But another time I'm thinking about a year prior, I don't know if you remember this, I was trying to get this website out, my website out.
I do remember this.
3 weeks to launch for 9 months.
Right.
And by the time I finally launched it, the company I'd used they just did a terrible job. They did a terrible job the whole way through, especially at the end point. And I remember feeling like I was trying so hard to fix things as they were dropping. That it was this idea of resisting everything that went wrong. And I just finally said, you know what? Everything's going wrong. Stop resisting.
Yeah.
And then within a matter of days, click, 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 everything cleaned up. And sometimes I think there's something to the idea that we put so much energy out trying to improve and fix and make better.
Yeah.
That some things you just need to kind of say, all right, go universe.
Yeah.
I'll be in the hot tub.
Well, it's something really. I mean, part of it for me, I know, is when I'm stuck in those ruts and I'm trying to make things work a little too hard. I find I'm also doing a lot of negative internal workings. I'm rehearsing my complaint over and over and over again, or I'm answering the question a little too often. How are you doing? And I actually spend so much time telling people how bad everything is. I get worse, as opposed to kind of in a disciplined way saying, counting my blessings and being grateful for what is actually good in my life, not just the negative. And I don't want this to come off as overly kumbaya. But there's a pragmatic reality here of this, and I know this for a fact. There are people right now listening to this conversation who are sitting by themselves in a dimly lit room and like with the glow of the computer, and they're rehearsing just this negative bad stuff in their head that's just not resourceful, and they're trying to make things work a certain kind of way as opposed to being open to the way it's ought to be. And kind of like you say, kind of letting it unfold a little bit better, or pulling the resistance back, because maybe I'm the resistance. I'm the one who's pushing it on a little too hard.
Well, how many times do you say to your kids are getting all worked up and you're like, just stop, take a minute, breathe, go away, go to your room, whatever, give it 10 minutes, come back. Like, the world didn't just become sunshiny in the last 10 minutes. You stepped back. You took a break. Yeah. Like, why do we stop doing that as adults? Time out, man.
Time out. Like, give yourself a time out.
Give yourself a time out. Because we get so, and I honestly believe there's something to this 24/7 connectivity that makes it all seem more urgent. You know, you turn on any sort of news, Fox News, CNN, everything's breaking news. Like everything, all the time. Yeah. And yet that's what our lives have become, being surrounded by social media and all the other expectations on us. And I think recognizing that very few things are actually urgent, and being really comfortable with separating that with what's important.
My dog Zoe helps me realize that not everything is urgent.
I was like, Dane, are you hungry? It sounded like your tummy. But it's that whole idea of like, what is really important here? Like, we have to do.
Okay, so I'm going to let my dog out. Talk amongst yourself just for a second.
Topic?
Why you think I'm great? Okay.
Okay, so Dane is great, like so great. What I don't know is if he edits this part out or if this goes on with me just talking to a blank chair. Could be really interesting either way. And if people are chatting right now, feel free to chat in ideas of what I should be soliloquying about.
Are you serious? You had nothing else to say in all that time on that topic. Unbelievable.
I can't remember.
One second, just a second. It's okay.
Oh, I hear Tammy.
Do I know what?
The Gardner's out here. I just didn't know if you let Zoe out thinking that...
Oh, I didn't know. She was just barking that I was doing a show, so I let her out. I think she's like, I think she's okay.
She's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I just didn't know if she...
As long as she's in the gate.
Are you on the phone?
I am.
I put the tree wraps...
Now I'm just eavesdropping along with everybody else.
Thank you.
Might be watching.
Okay, that was hilarious. That was my client.
Who was that?
That was a client who came over to drop off some stuff. So.
Oh, okay. First I thought it was Tammy, and then I was like, that's not her voice.
No.
Okay.
It's my client. No.
Oh, right. In this room.
No, we're good. So, you had nothing good to say about me, but it's okay. We'll move on. And thanks for the fun comments.
Well, that was the topic. And Dane is awesome. Love Dane.
Blah, blah, blah.
Great person. Wonderful communicator. Helpful individual to have in your life.
Congratulations on your book, by the way.
You mean all that? You know I do.
I know. This book is awesome. Envisioning Family. I think you should consider getting it. By the way, it's their daughter.
No, you're wrong.
That's not your daughter? That's not your daughter?
No.
It looks like her.
You've never met my kids, have you?
No, I've just seen pictures.
No. That's actually, I've been photographing them since forever. That's a family that...
Was she on the cover of another one of your books?
No.
Okay.
She's in there, though. They're all in there.
I'm looking.
They're just hidden. You're talking about my, obviously, my oldest daughter.
Yes.
There's one of her in the field. She's center focused. It's a long, wide shot. Her hair's up. Very cute.
Wait, there's this one, too. There's this guy.
Yes. That is my youngest daughter with Steve.
And, you guys can go check this out yourself because it's actually pretty fun. But I'm embarrassed that I thought that was your daughter and it's not. Will you ask her? Will you tell her? Will you ask her for my forgiveness?
She is my daughter's age.
Yeah, you're just helping me out right now. That's all that is. You also have a bunch of famous people in here. That's kind of fun.
Do I?
Yeah, like famous sports people from North Carolina on ESPN.
Oh, family portraits. Yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I didn't think any of those were in there. Right.
Anyhow,
that was actually I opened with one of my clients who I've photographed. Her husband, yes, is a famous sports person who I have photographed. 8 times I think now.
That's more times than you've been on my show.
I opened the chapter. I have an introduction where I asked her to do me a favor and just simply look at a recent family portrait and tell me, yes, that's my Sophie. That's my girl. Oh, I love that nugget. Yeah, you found her. You were driven. What messages were going through your head? Like, what?
Loser, loser, loser.
Oh, no, a winner. But I opened the book with an introduction because I wanted her to. You are too hard on yourself sometimes. You really are. It always stuns me sometimes because there are times that you actually get so down on yourself, and I don't get it.
Yeah.
You have so much to contribute. Stop it.
Little sidebar on this. Stop it. That's good. Little sidebar on this. I'm a high maintenance friend, so you don't want to become really close friends with me. Tamara made that mistake a long time ago. Now she's stuck for life.
I'm stuck. I'm in. Every once in a while, when you tell me something, which I think makes it very, very easy for a lot of people to relate to you. But sometimes you're so honest about your vulnerabilities, which we love, and we connect to you on that. And every once in a while, I hear some of the darker ones, and I'm like, no, Dane, nobody sees that. Like, it's such a disconnect how positively people see you. It's really interesting to me.
Thanks for saying that, friend.
Truly. So I was saying about the intro that I had her look at the family portrait because I wanted to start out with the whole book with the introduction being her looking at the portrait and just saying why it was meaningful to her. And I wasn't going to give her any coaching or any ideas. It was like, literally, that's the question. You tell me. And I think that was a really helpful start to what we were going into.
That's really cool. By the way, a little side note. I remember we were talking at one of our trips somewhere. I think it was New York a couple years ago, but we were talking about how you guys do your family night thing. And well, Tammy and I started doing that about 2 months ago, once a week. Yeah, and it's been amazing. Talk about making meaning and hilarious. Like, it's definitely not, as it was drawn up pregame, how they actually play out. But to have a little bit of intention, ask some questions, get in the dialogue, everyone says something, and go with whatever it is. It's been amazing. So thanks for that, by the way.
Good. I mean, it's amazing. It is fascinating to me how on the go everyone is that actually making a night weekly, which is often, that the intention is that we're all going to be in this room, not to watch TV, not to do this, but to actively go around and make sure we're all on the same page with life. Yeah. Like, when do we do that?
Well, it's funny. What we've been doing is we've been doing this kind of affirmation circle thing where every week one person gets to decide what dinner is, and everyone gets to say something about that person. It could be as simple as like, you didn't hit me when you said you were going to, or, something like that. But we get to acknowledge something about each person, and it's been fun. It's been really good, and I think we're going to do this for the rest of our lives. It's been pretty radical.
I love that.
Yeah.
Good.
And it is that timeout idea. Like, it's funny you mentioned the social media dynamic, and there's so many benefits of social media that I don't have an interest in giving up. But also understanding the tensions that come with those commitments. And like Chris Brogan did a really interesting piece today where he was talking specifically about there's a whole field of study of depression as it relates to social media. Somebody written a book on it, and he was talking about ways to mitigate against it, and it was pretty striking for someone who's as engaged as he is. But
what's the gist?
Basically, a lot of what you described with this whole idea of constant 24/7, everything's urgent. In the middle of that, it can lead to a series of dynamics that can contribute to depression. And to fight against that, the author talks about things like making sure that you build pleasure in your life somewhere, anything from a good meal to intimacy with your partner to flow, where you're having regular time, where you're doing what you're kind of made to do in a way that gets built into your life with regularity. Could be rest, Sabbath, whatever's meaningful for you.
I thought you were going to say another S word.
Yeah, I was.
Sabbath.
Sabbath. But just the idea was some really smart guy did a bunch of research and discovered the obvious, which is be human and don't be the machine we plug into, and it can contribute to thriving as opposed to disparaging. So I thought it was really interesting. It was an interesting observation that someone like Chris would make. But I think for all of us who were engaging in this dual world of a physical reality and a virtual reality, how do we maintain our humanity in the middle of it is everything. And just even as we're tidying up the show, like I love that I get to do this for a living with friends like you. You're mwah, I love you. And I'm stoked that we're going to be able to see each other again soon.
Yes, and I get to have you redefine finally. I'm catching up on all my taping.
Well, that's been going incredibly well. You want to say anything about, like, can people go check some of those out? Where do they go to redefine?
Redefineshow.com. But I've gotten some really good insight as to like what you do. You know, 'cause you've been doing this. This is your gazillionth show. You know, I think I've got like 14. It's there's a lot more to it than just, you're not really just chatting. You're going to think about this and that, and you know. Well,
there is those things, but honestly, what you've done over at Redefine is fantastic. It's super ambitious. Production value is crazy high. Guests have been amazing. You guys should go over there.
You're one of them.
Oh, well, not yet. The show could bomb instantly as soon as I'm on the show. It could be awful, but until then, it's great. So is it The Redefine Show or redefineshow.com?
Just redefineshow.com.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, go check it out. Go buy Envisioning Family today, or at the link, the Amazon link. It's not even an affiliate link. I don't even get a dime. I just put it up there because I think it's awesome, and I think you're awesome.
Well, to be fair, I don't really get a dime either. Yay, publishing!
Yay, good for them.
Yay! Now go support Impeachment, new writers.
Hey, when is your talk at WPPI?
Monday night at 6:30.
Monday night at 6:30. I'll be there.
And I'm doing Photo Ignite.
Oh, that's gonna be fun again.
Why are you doing that? You'd be fantastic at that.
You know, I don't know. You guys are a little crazy for me. I actually liked sitting in the crowd sweating on your behalf rather than watching you do it. So.
And I did sweat.
It's funny. I wrote a poem this year and I was gonna do it, and then I didn't. So I have it in my back pocket if somebody vomits and gets off stage or something. But
okay, but I'll know who to look for when I do that.
Cool. Well, and we're gonna see each other there. So and I'll be there on Sunday, and we'll go from there. So talk to you soon, my friend. Thanks for being.
When is yours? Remind me.
Mine's Wednesday afternoon.
At what time?
2:30.
I can go.
Yeah, right. Great.
Great.
And I'm giving away free T-shirts, so one's for you.
Even better. I'll be in the front row.
Cool, you guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for being here, my friend. And we'll see you all next time. Be sure to thank Adorama, and be sure to thank @Tamara Lackey. Be following her on Twitter. Thanks, you guys. Bye, Tamara.